Committee on International Trade. Today's meeting is televised and is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of January 25th, 2021. The committee is meeting today pursuant to Standing Order 108 and the motion adopted by the committee on Friday, May 28, 2021, to discuss the countervailing and anti-dumping duties on the imports of Canadian softwood lumber by the United States. With us today, we have the Honourable Mary Ng, Minister of International Trade, Small Business and Export Promotion, and her officials, Aaron Alexander, Director General, North America Trade Policy Bureau, Rosaline Kwan, Director General, Trade Sectors, Colin Barker, Director, Softwood Lumber Division, Michael Owen, Acting General Counsel and Executive Director, Softwood Lumber Litigation Division. Minister, we're thrilled that you came back and responded so quickly to the committee. I turn the floor over to you, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, for inviting me here, and I'm always pleased to speak to the committee. I'm very happy to provide you with an update on Canadian softwood lumber. Canada's forestry sector supports over 200,000 jobs in communities across the country, and in 2019 contributed $23.7 billion to our economy, or 1% of Canada's total GDP. Let me begin today by stating unequivocally that the duties imposed by the United States on Canadian softwood lumber are unwarranted and unfair, and they hurt workers and industry on both sides of the border. Les droits du douane imposés.
The duties imposed by the United States on Canadian softwood lumber are unjustified.
The States has always relied on Canadian lumber products to meet its domestic needs for high-quality building materials, and with this year's overwhelming demand, this has never been more true. Last month, the U.S. Department of Commerce signaled in its second administrative review the intention to significantly increase duties on Canadian softwood lumber later this year. While the final report and resulting tariff rates will not be in place until November, we are disappointed by this unjustified development. U.S. duties on Canadian softwood lumber products are a tax on the American people. They make housing less affordable for Americans and hinder economic recovery. An increase would exacerbate the harm being caused to Canadian communities, as well as to U.S. home builders and consumers who are dealing with soaring lumber prices. We are not sitting idly by. I have raised these unfair duties at every opportunity possible, directly with President Biden, with U.S. Trade Representative Tai, and with Commerce Secretary Raimondo. And as we have always done, we will continue to vigorously defend Canada's forestry sector and the hundreds of thousands of jobs that it supports. We're taking a Team Canada approach, working hand in hand with the softwood lumber industry, labor unions, and provincial and territorial partners on all fronts. We have launched a series of challenges against the initial U.S. duties on softwood lumber through both at the World Trade Organization as well as through the new NAFTA. Our consistent and numerous legal victories clearly demonstrate our softwood industry is in full compliance with international trade rules and that Canada is a trading partner in good standing in the multilateral rules-based system. This year, while coping with challenges and restrictions, the forestry sector has stepped up to help keep Canadians safe. The industry has been vital to our supply chains, producing components for essential pandemic goods like PPE that Canadians have relied on. Other nations, including the United States, have also relied on Canadian exports of these components. I would like to thank our softwood lumber industry, and as we emerge from this pandemic, we will continue to be there for them. Je remercie notre industrie forestière.
I would like to thank our softwood lumber industry, and as we emerge from this pandemic, we will continue to be there for them.
We have made sure to support our industry and workers since 2017 through the Softwood Lumber Action Plan. Oh, excuse me, there is an incoming call that I need to turn off. We have made sure that our support for the industry and workers since 2017 through the Softwood Lumber Action Plan. And through the pandemic, we have supported our industry with around 8,500 forestry firms with a total of nearly $600 million through the government's emergency wage subsidy program. Our forestry sector is also playing a leadership role as we work towards an inclusive and sustainable long-term recovery. Canada's softwood lumber industry is a global leader in its commitment to sustainable development and environmental standards, helping to secure a more sustainable future for all Canadians. It is a perfect example of how the economy and the environment go hand in hand. Working together, we will be able to reach our target of net zero emissions by 2050. It is clear that we have so much to be proud of with our forestry sector and with softwood lumber. Our industry shows leadership on so many fronts, from environmental stewardship to innovation to global trade, while supporting hardworking Canadians and economic growth. Allow me to reiterate here my personal commitment to use every opportunity to raise softwood lumber with my U.S. interlocutors and to defend the interests of the Canadian forestry sector and forestry workers across the country. Notre gouvernement défend.
Our government will always stand up for Canada's forestry sector. Thank you.
Minister, appreciate that. On to Ms. Gray for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the Minister for being so accommodating and being with us here today. We appreciate it. Minister, you met with U.S. Trade Representative Tai on May 17th and 18th, and your readout says you discussed softwood lumber. These new tariffs were announced on May 21st. Did Ambassador Tai inform you of these tariffs, if they were increasing and if they were coming?
I want to thank the honourable member for that question. No, she did not. I did raise it. As I say, I always raise softwood lumber at every opportunity with U.S. interlocutors.
So is it a concern for you that Ambassador Tai didn't give you the courtesy of letting you know that this was coming, especially since it was so soon after your meeting?
I think I would say to the honourable member that the process for the administrative review, I understand, takes place through the Department of Commerce, and we were notified of the administrative review number 2.
So, Minister, have you met with or spoke with Ambassador Tai since the U.S. announced its intention to double the softwood lumber tariffs on May 21st?
The last meeting that I had with Ambassador Tai was also with Mexico. It was at the Free Trade Commission, where the three of us are committed to the successful implementation of the new NAFTA and ensuring that our efforts to global recovery, including that for the environment, for labor, and for inclusive growth, is something that we are all working on towards North American competitiveness.
So, Minister, you're saying that this announcement came just a few days after you met with the ambassador, and you didn't call her up and say, "What is this? What's going on?" You didn't pick up the phone and call her and say, what is going on?
I stand up for the Canadian softwood forestry sector and softwood lumber workers and businesses as a top priority. This is a very important sector that employs many, many Canadians, and it is my commitment to always defend their interests.
Okay, so Minister, did you meet with or speak with Ambassador Hillman since May 21st, since this announcement?
I'm in regular contact with Ambassador Hillman on a range of issues with respect to my file. So I always speak to the ambassador.
Since May 21st, have you spoken this matter?
Well, I would have to look specifically at my schedule. I'm in regular contact with the ambassador on matters of Canada-U.S. relations, particularly as it relates to my file.
So would you be able to table information as to when you were speaking with Ambassador Hillman on this matter since May 21st?
What I would say to the honourable member and to the forestry sector, and I appreciate all of the work that you do as a sector, but I will always defend your interests. We have been doing that. We will continue to do that and raise how unjustified these tariffs are.
Okay, Minister.
Indeed.
Minister, did you meet with or speak with U.S. Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo since May 21st?
I have had the opportunity to raise the issue of softwood lumber with the Commerce Secretary.
Since May 21st?
I have had the opportunity to speak to the Commerce Secretary about softwood lumber.
Okay. So what is the number of U.S. legislators at the federal or state level you've met with since May 21st as well?
I have had the opportunity to meet with labor representatives, as well as legislators to advocate for Canada, for the softwood lumber industry. It is a top priority for me to stand up for Canadian businesses, particularly here in the forestry sector.
So, Minister, May 21st wasn't that long ago. So, how many U.S. legislators would you have met with? It wasn't really that long ago, in your best estimation.
Well, I think to the honourable member, what is really important here is that that Canada continues to defend our softwood lumber and forestry sector. We are very clear about the tariffs being unjustified. We also know that that these tariffs really are a tax on the American people because it makes it more difficult to do the work that needs to be around home building and affordable housing, and we know that Canadian softwood lumber is also terrific products that are environmentally sound, and I think that there are wonderful opportunities for us to be working together, especially in the area of the environment.
So, I mean, you can't give us concrete information as to when you're actually having meetings and how you're addressing this issue with your counterparts. We don't have dates. We don't know how many, how you're standing up for Canadians and forestry sectors. So, it's a little disconcerting that you can't say, look, these are dates that we're meeting. These are future dates that we have coming up. So can you tell us, how you're addressing this? What future dates have you scheduled to address this?
What I would say to the honourable member is that this is a file that is a top priority for me and for our government. Standing up for the forestry sector that employs so many people across this country against these unjustified tariffs is what we have been doing. But we have also been doing other work as well to help the industry also look and pursue diversification into other markets, which I'm very happy to also speak about.
So, Minister, you can understand how this is concerning. You have given us no information.
On to Mr. Dhaliwal for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I want to thank the Honourable Minister Ng. Anytime we asked her to come to the committee, she's always accessible. Anytime I have gone to her, whether it's BC lumber issues or any other trade issues, she's always been very professional and very accessible to help. Madam Minister, you mentioned about the sustainability and environmental consciousness in your speech today, and I give you a perfect example here in British Columbia in Port Alberni. I met with the Kamal Sanghera of SAN Group, who this week announced $100 million of investment in Port Alberni, and not only the investment, but in fact, they will be using the sawdust and the shavings to create green energy. And also the waste from all these operations to build pallets. Minister, could you please share how Canadian companies like such in this sector can diversify, and how can the government help them diversify locally and diversify their exports so that they are not reliant on only one market?
Well, I want to thank the honourable member for that very important question. As my honourable colleague knows, our government is committed to tackling climate change. We know that that is the biggest long-term threat of our generation. But in doing so, we can create great opportunities around green growth, and that is so important during this time in the economic recovery. I also want to say that Canada's forestry sector is one of the most sustainable in the world, and I think it bears repeating that the economy and the environment indeed do go hand in hand, and our government is committed to supporting the softwood lumber industry and by promoting its reputation around the world. I know that our softwood industry takes incredible pride being a global leader in sustainable forestry management, and environmentally responsible forestry. And the honourable member talks about how there are additional opportunities for the sector. And it's incredible what they are doing. They are innovating and they are looking to diversify, not only diversify their products, but diversify opportunities in international markets. And so many of those companies that are diversifying are also small and medium-sized businesses. So whether it is biofuels or whether it is wood-based bioproducts, going into other various industries, whether it be automotive or chemical or food or cosmetics, this is what we are seeing of our forestry sector. And our government has invested in the trade diversification strategy. Here, we are helping our Canadian businesses pursue opportunities in the global marketplace. We get to say, listen, we're the one G7 country that has a free trade agreement with every other G7 country, 1.5 billion customers in the global marketplace, helping our businesses connect. So let me just give you one sort of concluding statistic here. Our Trade Commissioner Service, who I think is absolutely terrific, has provided over 705 instances of referrals or connections to help 260 forestry clients make those exact connections of what they are doing here and helping them diversify and grow and then getting them into international markets. In fact, I've got a long list of businesses that are just doing that, but it's terrific. There's lots of them in BC.
Thank you, Minister. Minister, the U.S. National Association of Home Builders has expressed concerns regarding the lumber dispute and have urged their government to reach a long-term resolution. And do you believe that U.S. stakeholders that support free trade with Canada in softwood lumber products can contribute to resolving the current issues?
Yeah, absolutely. My honorable colleague is absolutely right. I mean, we need to continuously, vigorously defend the interests of the Canadian softwood lumber industry, and the tariffs that are imposed or that could be imposed through the signaling of this second administrative review, will have a direct effect on American consumers and on home builders. I do think that, and the approach that we are taking is a Team Canada one, working with Canadian industries and working with our provinces and territories so that we can work with the United States and get to a resolution of this where it will benefit job creation on both sides of the border.
And Madam Minister, in the absence of functioning WTO appellant body, to what extent are the rights of Canadian softwood lumber exporters protected under the mechanisms of CUSMA?
Well, that's a really important question. It is precisely why it was so important that we negotiated Chapter 10 of CUSMA, and this replaces the former Chapter 19. To have a strong dispute settlement mechanism in our trade agreement is absolutely essential. We heard that very loudly from industry, particularly the softwood lumber industry. I just want to remind colleagues that we have consistently defended the softwood lumber industry, and we have been awarded victories. I mean, which demonstrate that Canada is in compliance with international trade rules. But we will continue to do that at these panels through CUSMA.
Thank you very much, Minister. On to Mr. Savard-Tremblay for 6 minutes, please.
Merci, désolé.
Thank you very much. I didn't hear that you were giving the floor to me. Before asking my question, Minister, I think it's unfortunate that the committee began before I arrived. I was in the vote, and usually there is nothing done before we are free from the voting. I would now like to ask my question to the Minister. Hello. Thank you for being with us today. If we believe the reports of the telephone conversations between the Prime Minister and the President, the Prime Minister has not underscored the importance of the softwood lumber. During the discussions that are going to be held between the Prime Minister and the President, will softwood lumber be on the agenda?
Merci.
Thank you very much to my colleague for this question.
Is a important issue for Canada, and the sector, of course, is a really important employer that employs hundreds of thousands of Canadians. And we certainly are disappointed with the findings of the Administrative Review number 2. I do raise at every opportunity with the United States the issue of softwood lumber. Indeed, when I was in the meeting with the Prime Minister and the President, I also had the opportunity to also raise softwood lumber. So it is important, and we will continue to stand up for the industry and for their workers and continue to do this important work.
But will the upcoming discussions between the President and the Prime Minister deal with the softwood lumber issue?
Thank you for that question. As I have, as I have said, we will absolutely be working as a Team Canada, and I certainly am on the Prime Minister's team and Team Canada on this, and know that this issue is very, very important to our government, and we will be sure to continue to raise this with our American partners.
I haven't gotten a reply, but I think I won't get one. So what are you waiting for to begin these conversations? What actions are planned? What strategy is planned to convince President Biden with regard to this file?
Well, we have consistently been working on softwood lumber, and in the interest of the Canadian industry, and whether it is continuing to defend their interests and those of their workers through litigation through Chapter 19 of NAFTA or Chapter 10 of CUSMA, and certainly before the WTO, we will continue that work. We also are ensuring that the industry is supported, and well before this pandemic, and even even as tariffs have been levied to our sector, we've been working with the sector, making investments so that they can diversify their products. They can look at additional markets to which they can pursue opportunities and customers. We have done this. We are looking at. We have actually successfully attracted foreign direct investment. To invest in some of our sawmills across the country. So this work really is a broad approach. It's about helping the sector, investing in the sector, as well as defending the interest of against these tariffs.
So there is a plan to diversify our partners. And they have strategies to that end. But is there no strategy to convince President Biden to negotiate and reopen this file?
We have consistently said that we are ready for a discussion at any time. We are very interested in finding a resolution to this. We believe that is what would be good for the Canadian industry, but also for the Americans as well. So we are ready for those discussions, absolutely. But that is what we will continue to do, and we will vigorously do this. We'll vigorously defend the interests of the Canadian softwood lumber and forestry sector. But at the same time, we want to help those small and medium-sized businesses who are very keen on both innovating and creating opportunities and products that really are tackling climate change as well, and getting them the support that they need so that they can look at diversifying and growing their companies into the international marketplace.
Madame la Présidente, do I have any more time? 40 seconds. 40 seconds. Well, why not make this one of the main topics of discussion between the two heads of state?
Well, I want to thank the honorable colleague for that question. And if I just reflect on the Free Trade Commission meeting that I had, where we actually talked about the importance of labor, the importance of inclusive growth as we build back from the pandemic, as we look at the environment, there are a range of issues that are important, and the president and the prime minister also have a roadmap, Canada-U.S. roadmap for this economic recovery. So we are going to work with the United States on a range of issues, but I want to assure you that I will keep working hard to defend the interests of the Canadian forestry sector and softwood lumber.
Thank you, Minister. On to Mr. McGregor for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Minister, for appearing before the committee. I represent a riding that has a very long history with forestry, and I took some time before today's meeting to consult with the local steelworkers union, who have many employees in the local mills in my riding. Now, coastal forestry products are a pretty specialized subgroup, and we have a pretty diversified market, but we certainly are affected by what's going on in the United States as well. I wanted to sort of put my questions in the context of the astronomical lumber prices we're seeing right now. Are those, to some extent, helping us weather this current storm with the U.S.?
I want to thank the honourable member. I think this might be the first time we've had an opportunity to speak at committee, so it's wonderful to have the opportunity to do this. I think that the tariffs that have been imposed are certainly causing concern for home builders and for consumers. We are, of course, concerned about it from the standpoint of our sector and our industry, but certainly there is cause for concern. The tariffs just add. They just add to the cost, and as I have said, they are like a tax to the American home builder or consumer who is looking for this product. So we are committed to working with the United States on this matter.
Minister, can I just another question? But one thing the steelworkers did note is that many large Canadian companies also have sizable footprints in the United States. Like, for example, Western Forest Products, which is probably the biggest player in my region in terms of the mills that they operate, they have a much larger footprint in the United States, like especially in the state of Virginia. So, how are those companies playing? Are they playing different strategies on both sides of the border here? Or are you noticing anything? Because that was a concern that was raised with me directly.
Well, thank you very much for that question. My team and I are in constant discussion and dialogue with the industry, as you can imagine, because it's very important that we stay very connected. I too have had the opportunity to speak to both the steelworkers here in Canada as well as in the U.S., so that the workers' perspective is so that I can be informed by the workers' perspective as well. And I think what I would say here is that keeping supply chain open is what they have certainly said was really important to me, or to them rather, and to continue defending the industry against the tariffs that have been levied, which are unjustified.
Okay, but yeah, I'm not sure I've got an answer on how companies might be playing the sides depending on what side of the border they're on. But just following on what Mr. Dhaliwal asked, he made reference to U.S. groups that are opposed to what's going on with the application of the duties. Groups such as the National Association of Home Builders. We know that adding duties to already high lumber prices is going to hurt home construction naturally. Just more clarification. What is the Canadian government doing to identify groups like that? Maybe latch on to the lobbying power they have with U.S. elected officials. Is that part of the strategy? Can you inform the committee more information on that aspect, please?
Well, thank you for that question. And the answer is yes, we are speaking and working with, with both industry and workers on both sides of the border. We're very much taking a Team Canada approach. I am my team and I are in very close contact with both workers and, and businesses here on this side of the border. And we continue to work at all levels of government, including through the ambassador in the United States, to make sure that we are taking a whole of government and Canada approach here to see if we can get to a discussion and a resolution.
And thank you, Minister. And maybe just time for one more question. How much longer can Canada afford for this perennial problem to continue? I mean, to some extent, our mills are going gangbusters right now with the high prices in lumber, but that's not going to stay the case forever. Is there a point at some point in the future where lumber prices decrease to a certain point where these tariffs start applying far more hurt? At what point does Canada have to change its strategy? If you can illuminate the committee on that front, that would be greatly appreciated.
Well, thank you for that. We will keep doing the work that to defend the industry against these tariffs, and we will, and we are ready. We are ready for a discussion. We always have been, but the work for the industry, in support of the industry, it has been going on for a number of years under our government. In 2017, when the first U.S. import duties were applied, we invested $867 million for the softwood lumber action plan so that we can help businesses in this sector with the tools to diversify and to support them, including employee training and so forth, so that we are supporting and helping the sector. And it's really wonderful to see the sector, whether it's Indigenous Forestry Initiative or through the investments on the forest industry transformation, that the sector is really innovating. And they're innovating by creating products that really are also going to tackle climate change, and that they are doing that here in Canada, creating new products, new innovations, and that
Minister.
being able to export that.
Thank you, Madam Minister. Sorry to cut you off.
No, okay.
Mr. Martel, for 5 minutes, please.
Merci.
Thank you very much, Chair. And thank you, Minister, for being with us here today. The new agreement provided an opportunity to negotiate with regard to softwood lumber, but it hasn't happened. Why sign the new agreement without an agreement on softwood lumber?
I'm not sure I fully understood the question. What I would say is that Canada, stands ready and willing to always have a discussion, and we do believe that a negotiated settlement would be in the best interest of both countries. But in the meantime, we must defend against these unwarranted tariffs, which we will continue to do.
Oui.
On 4 March 2021, the American Commerce opened its next review mechanism on tariffs with regard to softwood lumber. How will you react to this measure or these measures in order to protect softwood lumber?
Well, thank you so much to the honourable member, and I know how important the sector and the industry is to the people in his riding in Quebec, and we of course are disappointed at the announcement around the administrative review, and we have clearly communicated that the duties are unjustified and that they do hurt workers in both of our countries. We we will continue to defend the interests of the Canadian softwood lumber and forestry sector through CUSMA, through Chapter 10, through through the WTO. We will continue to defend their interests.
You know that it's very difficult right now to guarantee stability with our American trade partner in the area of softwood lumber. How can you protect other foreign markets or increase domestic demand for Canadian wood products?
Well, thank you very much. Right now, as we are all looking to help, well, not right now, we've been helping businesses right from the beginning of this pandemic to support them, to get them through the pandemic. But I think right now there is a real opportunity to help our businesses look at new customers, at different customers. The Canadian Trade Commissioner Service has been doing this work really excellently for the last number of years because of the government's commitment to a trade diversification strategy and an investment of $1.1 billion. And we are really seeing some excellent innovations by Canadian companies. And if I take there's a good couple of examples of good wood biocomposite solutions, for example, that are from Canadian companies that are being developed here, that are being exported to both the U.S. as well as to Europe. Tall wood construction, which is an innovation out of British Columbia, is finding markets in Australia and Japan and the Philippines for their products. So the opportunity to help our businesses on this economic road to recovery and build that capability for them to diversify is what we are doing in addition to defending their interests here against the American tariffs.
According to Statistics Canada, the price of softwood lumber increased 3 times more, from $600 to $2,000 per foot. And how can we fight against these increases?
I think that thank you so much for that question. I think that the tariffs that have been applied is causes difficulty here for Canadian for the Canadian industry, but it certainly does as well for the American consumer and their home builders. And at every opportunity, we will raise this issue with our my American counterparts.
Thank you very much, Minister. On to Ms. Spindayan for 5 minutes, please.
Oui, merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I'd like to begin by underscoring the importance of the forest and softwood lumber for Quebec, which represents $10 billion per year. This is a sector which has more than 150,000 direct jobs in Quebec and more beyond. And these are good, well-paying jobs. It's also important, as the Minister underscored earlier, to stress that Canada and Quebec are world leaders in sustainable management of forests with legal structures and controls that are among the strictest in the world. We know that there are various trade disputes with regard to the states. This is nothing new. This is a challenge that's long-standing, that goes back to the 1980s.
The softwood lumber disputes while I was in law school studying international trade dispute resolution. And I think, it's really important to remember that this is a disagreement that spans many, many different Canadian governments, many different United States administrations. And I was wondering if you could let us know a little bit more specifically the approach that this particular government has taken since coming into power in order to defend the Canadian softwood lumber industry.
Well, thank you so much to my terrific parliamentary secretary for that question. And my colleague is absolutely right. This is an issue that spans over a very long time, and we have always been very clear that the duties that have been imposed by the United States on Canada's softwood lumber are both unwarranted and unfair, and they hurt workers and they hurt industry on both sides of the border. And I don't think I can underscore that. We will continue to vigorously defend their interests. We have certainly launched a series of challenges against the United States duties, both through the WTO, but also through the new NAFTA in CUSMA, as well as the original NAFTA. And as I've said before, Canada has been consistently awarded legal victories that clearly demonstrate that our softwood industry is in full compliance with international trade rules. In other words, Canada does not subsidize the softwood industry, the softwood lumber industry. And we're going to take a Team Canada approach here. We're working hand in hand with the industry, with labor unions, with provincial and territorial partners on all fronts. And we're going to keep doing this work. It doesn't stop. This is a sector that supports hundreds of thousands of good middle-class jobs in for Canadians, and certainly in your home province of Quebec. So it's very important, and I often remark at just how innovative the sector is and what a leader they are, particularly in pursuing both the environment and the economic growth. And it is exactly that which we are delighted to support through the trade diversification strategy, making sure that our resources in the Trade Commissioner Service is working hand in hand with the sector to help them with market analysis in different international markets, helping businesses pursue both investment and opportunities to take those products. And in fact, it's the green products that they're taking, biofuels, inputs, PPEs, inputs into PPE, inputs into, sort of new fibers that are going into automobiles. So just a real range of innovations that the sector has pursued, which we are supporting through our efforts and our investments.
Thank you very much for that, Minister. And I know that we will have the opportunity perhaps later with officials to ask questions about, Canada's position and the legal analysis behind the government's position. I understand that we, as a government, are fully in compliance with our CUSMA obligations. But of course, these legal disputes do have a tendency to drag on. And so, talking about diversifying the market for our forestry sector, do you feel like there are any particular markets that this government can help the sector diversify to in terms of new trading opportunities?
Can we get a brief answer, Minister?
Well, the answer is there's 1.5 billion customers in the global marketplace because of the trade agreements that that Canada has with countries around the world. And what I would also say is that the opportunity to grow not only green but to grow inclusive is very much what I see happening here. So women-led businesses, Indigenous-led businesses, racialized-led businesses. So the opportunities for them to grow and to support that growth through like the Can Export program is very much our commitment to the sector.
Thank you, Minister. On to Mr. Savard-Tremblay for 2.5 minutes, please.
Oui, merci. Alors,
Thank you very much. So there are two bills that will soon be voted on, one from New York and one from California. And we hope that the states will stop use getting wood from declining or forests, and the term of declining or forest in decline can be very broad in this kind of law, and this could lead to other obstacles for the export of wood that could be negative for British Columbia and Quebec. Do you have any more information on what might be considered to be a forest in danger or declining?
Merci.
Thank you very much to my colleague for this question.
Canada's forestry sector is sustainable. They're a leader here, and Canada's forest laws are among the strictest in the world. And we very much collaborate closely with the United States on forest management. We certainly are, again, taking a Team Canada approach and monitoring the situation in these other, in the legislation in these other jurisdictions in the U.S. and making sure that we're working with our provincial colleagues as well as the industry to register our views, making sure that we are keeping a close eye on this. But our forest management practices and our sustainability here is among some of the strictest in the world, and this is really important to us.
Don't you think then that these bills in New York or California might have any kind of effect at all on our exports?
Well, we are monitoring them, and we will stay in very close touch with our industry and with our workers as these bills make their way through the legislative process. Of course, our team in the U.S. is also monitoring this very closely because our job is to make sure we continuously defend the interests of our Canadian forestry sector.
Thank you, Minister. On to Mr. McGregor for 2.5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, I wanted to ask you just regarding the WTO appellate body, the fact that we don't have a functioning body at present. And I wanted to ask you about how that's impacting the Government of Canada's strategy. I mean, right now you do have the binational review mechanism under CUSMA, but can you just can you inform the committee of just how the WTO's body and the fact that it is not functioning, how is that impacting our approach in all of this?
Well, thank you for that question. Canada, of course, and I, as the trade minister, lead the Ottawa Group with many of our international partners where we are looking at working together on WTO reform. We've been clear that one of the areas that need reforming is ensuring a full functioning appellate body at the WTO. As it's very important to the multilateral rules-based trading system. That is the work that we have contributed to as Canada, and of course the WTO is a consensus-based organization, but I'm very pleased to be leading the effort among a number of countries as part of the Ottawa Group work. We've been clear that a binding system, a two-stage dispute settlement system at the WTO is necessary, and we will continue this very important work with our international colleagues.
And Minister, the final question, what is the anticipated cost of our litigation, both under the WTO and CUSMA, and how might that compare with previous efforts?
Well, thank you for that. Perhaps that might be a question that I might have the officials answer, if that's quite all right. I don't have the information, but I know the officials are here at the second half, and perhaps they might be able to provide that to you, if that's all right.
Okay.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Mr. McGregor. On to Mr. Abatai for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you. Thanks, Minister, for appearing. Quick question. Do you think we are at the point of no return with the United States on the softwood lumber industry or trade?
Not at all. The United States is a partner to Canada, and they're our largest trading partner. We've always said that we are ready to be in discussions, and I'm going to work with Canadian industry and Canadian workers and with the Americans on this. I think it's important. I think it's very important to Canadian industry to not say that there isn't a way forward there. So we must work at it.
So you may. Looks like you're optimistic on moving forward. Would you be able to advise us on what is the base of that, other than our traditional relationships and the long history between Canada and US and the CUSMA and everything else? Can you be specific, please, and why? What makes you so optimistic?
My optimism has to do with my absolute commitment to the industry here in Canada in the forestry sector, in the hundreds of thousands of jobs.
That covers our side, Minister. I'm talking about the American side. There must be some indications there that tells you that we can overcome the situation, because this is devastating for the industry, as you know, and this didn't come like out of nowhere, because it's not in CUSMA. That means this was planted a long time ago.
Well, the softwood lumber issue has been going on, as I think we said earlier, for many decades between Canada and the United States. I'm very committed to working to defend the interests of the Canadian forestry sector and softwood lumber. I work with the Canadian industry and our workers to do so. We defend the interest against the unjustified tariffs through our means, through our legal means. But at the same time, we have always said that we are ready, and we're always ready for a discussion.
Okay, Minister, on the impact on jobs in Canada throughout this whole issue that we're having, do you know by number how many jobs will be affected as a result of what's going on?
Well, I want to thank the honourable member for asking me those specific statistical questions, as some of his other colleagues on his side have done too. And what I might refer you to is, there are both employment statistics as well as production volumes, as well as price information on Statistics Canada. So perhaps that might be the best way in which he might get that information.
You mentioned throughout your remarks that this is impacting inside the United States on the cost of lumber, the cost of new buildings and so forth. Why the lumber is pricing going up in Canada then?
Well, I appreciate the honourable member for that question. What I would say here is that that the tariffs that could go up as a result of the finding of this the second administrative review, of course, is concerning, and we will need to vigorously defend the Canadian industry's interests, and I'll do that along with our industry and our workers.
Yeah, and what can we tell Canadians, the average Canadian that wants to buy lumber, building a house, doing anything? What can we tell them? What can you tell them?
I think you can tell them that my commitment is both sincere, and I continue to work hard on behalf of the industry.
But sincerity and commitment doesn't put food on the table. I'm asking if we need to give Canadians some answers, some facts. What can we say to them if the U.S. is imposing tariffs on the product going their way? That means that makes it expensive there. Why this is also reflecting on the Canadian consumer? Why?
Well, I appreciate the honourable member's question, and what I would say to Canadians, and particularly those workers in the forestry sector who are middle-class Canadians, and who that we will continue to work very hard on their behalf, and we will do that with our American partners, and I will continue to pursue this work with the Canadian industry, and just as we have done from day one.
Thank you, Minister.
Thanks.
Sorry, Mr. Overton, time is up. The last questioner for the Minister, we thank you for staying the full hour, would be Mr. Sarai for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Minister, for coming again. As you have heard, for British Columbians, softwood is a huge deal. It's 12 billion in our economy, 1 in 16 jobs. My father worked in the sector. Every uncle in my family has worked in that sector, especially in the first generation that migrated to this area. And my riding, I believe I have the most softwood lumber employees in the country. Along the entire Fraser River, we have tons of mills. Canada has been struggling with this for decades. It's not a new problem. Softwood lumber agreements come, they have a short time of stability, and then they break apart, and tariffs come up, and takes years, and it's resolved again. This time we have one just recently in August of last year. Why is the U.S., despite losing at the WTO, coming back again and raising tariffs from 10% to almost doubling it to 19%? What's their argument? I'm trying to think. What's their rationale that they're trying to do?
Well, thank you so very much for that question. And in response to this latest review, we have certainly said, we've certainly said to the United States that that an increase would really be equivalent to a tax on the American consumer and the American home builder, and we will continue to make this argument, at the same time defending the industry through the appropriate channels. But what I would also say is that it's also really important to highlight that while we are defending these actions, we are also working with the industry and have been. Starting from when we first got here as government, when the first U.S. imposed duties were made in 2017, we invested $867 million on a softwood lumber action plan. In budget 2019, added another $250 million over 3 years. During COVID-19, the sector and 8,500 firms in the forest sector benefited from the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy so that they can keep workers on the payroll. And that was about a $600 million support. We are also helping accelerate the adoption of transformative technologies and products that the sector themselves are working on. And this is through an $82 million investment to help the sector accelerate and to transform through their industry, forest industry transformation program, and another $12 million specifically for economic opportunities for Indigenous communities in the forest sector. So we're working whole of government, certainly with the
Minister,
sector.
I'm trying to see, is it the department that's doing it, or is the industry in the U.S. really pushing them hard? Is because we've now had a regime change, a government change, and still this has happened again. Is it the industry is pushing hard? And with that, I have a follow-up question. Are we looking at retaliatory tariffs or measures that, if this continues, is that an option that's on the table, a tool in the tool chest?
Well, I want to thank you for that. I mean, the administrative review, of course, is done by the Department of Commerce, and they do this through a regular cycle. It is encouraging to hear Secretary of Commerce Raimondo say that she understands how the review has and its potential increase on tariffs will actually affect American consumers and home builders, and that she is, she's publicly said that she would work with Canada. So that's very, that's encouraging. And our job here is to make sure that we are defending the interest of our companies and the sector against this review and against the tariffs that have been applied.
Thank you very much, Minister. Thank you so much for giving us that extra 12 minutes since we started late. So your officials will remain, and we will continue our work as a committee. So thank you again, Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Have a wonderful weekend.
Yes, you too.
All right, on to Mr. Lobb for 5 minutes, please.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. To our officials, you likely heard the last hour and a bit of discussion, and the one thing I don't think the minister really discussed at all was the difference in stumpage rates, and I think that's the core of the issue. The difference from province to province, the difference in monthly, quarterly, and annual rates. Is that not the core of the issue, what we're talking about here today?
Thank you very much, Honourable Member, for that question. Madam Chair, I think...
Appel au règlement, Madame la Présidente.
I'm sorry, there are problems with the interpretation.
Sorry, should I continue?
No, just hold on a minute, Mr. Alexander, till we make sure we have translation.
I think we need to suspend, Madam Chair, for a couple of minutes.
Okay, I have to suspend for a few minutes. Just please hold your place there. Okay, Mr. Lobb, we're going to start over with you, so you have your 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. And I guess my first question is, and maybe I'm wrong here, but everything I read is talking about stumpage rates. If you look at Alberta's rates, I think they're about 5 times what New Brunswick's rates are. Some are set yearly, some are set quarterly, some are set monthly. Is this not just kind of, I mean, I'm for Canada, obviously, but this is not really the heart of the US's issue here?
Once again, thank you, Honourable Member, for the question. Madam Chair, as the Minister noted, the softwood lumber dispute with the United States has been going on since probably the early 1980s. And I think the Honourable Member did hit at the crux of the dispute, which is a difference in forest management practices. The majority of forestable land in Canada is Crown-owned. It's publicly owned land, while the majority of forestable land in the United States is privately owned. And so the U.S. Lumber Coalition, which is the main driver in the United States industry for this dispute, contends that the difference in stumpage fees between that which is charged in Canada for harvesting on public land and that difference between the price that is charged for harvesting in the United States on private land is a subsidy. We do not agree with this whatsoever, and so I think that is the crux of the issue.
And, right, but when you see what the rate is in Alberta versus New Brunswick, I mean, you've talked to some of your counterparts in either province. Have you ever had the discussion why it's $130 a cubic meter difference?
Well, thank you for that follow-up question. So, Madam Chair, I think the price for stumpage fees is dependent very much on the circumstances in each province. What the United States Department of Commerce has done.
No, just sorry to interrupt you, but this is a North American market.
Yes.
And it's the contention is not each province. The contention is on, and not how each premier or minister views it. It should, you know, we are in a North American market here. So I can't imagine the Trade Commission in the United States has much sympathy for that argument, do they?
What I guess the argument is, and our contention is that it should be based on the circumstances of each province. And that's what we do argue to the Department of Commerce. The United States is using a Nova Scotia benchmark for all provinces from Atlantic Canada to Alberta, and using a Washington State benchmark for lumber produced in British Columbia. And so we totally disagree with the use of a Nova Scotia benchmark and argue vehemently with the Department of Commerce that the benchmark that should be used should be individual for each province, and that would adjust for the circumstances in each province.
What's the price of a cubic meter of, you know, a comparable in Louisiana versus, say, Saskatchewan or Alberta? I know there's a million different varieties, but on average here.
I'm sorry, I don't know that. Maybe I'll ask Colin if he has any information on pricing, but I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that.
No, I don't have that off the top of my head either. But I guess only to say that the comparator the U.S. The Department of Commerce chooses to use in this instance, as my colleague mentioned, is what we feel is inappropriate, because there are different market conditions, different species in each province, different local markets for those species. So that really does impact the stumpage price in those provinces.
I mean,
if I may.
Okay, go ahead.
If I may, it's important to recognize that markets for stumpage or standing timber are inherently local. So standing timber, like a lot of natural resources, is inherently a residual value good. So to just give you a very practical, simple example, a tree that's 200 kilometers away from a mill is going to be worth less than the exact same tree if it's 50 kilometers away from a mill. And that's because you've got hauling costs that are going to be shorter and less expensive. The same other dynamics sort of play into this that my colleague, Mr. Barker, touched on. So certain species are worth more than other species. If you have a stand that has a lot of Western red cedar, for example, which is a high value product, that's going to be worth more than stands with other species mixes.
Yeah.
And local demand. So I think, like, you know, one of the very important things to know is stumpage markets in each province. You know, even within British Columbia, for example, you have a coastal market and you have an interior market. Yep. And even within the interior market, you have a lot of submarkets. So the pricing is very idiosyncratic and dependent on the local circumstances. And that's the position that we've taken and tried to explain, frankly, to the U.S. Department of Commerce.
Doesn't the U.S. have
time.
the same? Doesn't the
Yeah,
U.S. have the same challenges?
Absolutely, it does.
Okay.
And one of the things that we
I'm
pointed
sorry
out
that Mr. Lobb's time is
Yep.
up, and we're on to Mr. Sheehan for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to ask some questions today on this very important matter. And picking up on what the minister was talking about how this is a tax on Americans. And, I wanted to know if any of our witnesses would have sort of a calculation for us. I mean, we used to, kind of figure out, it's a little bit of deja vu with the steel tariffs. And when this trade committee was down in the United States, we mentioned that'd be a tax. And it hits hardest the middle class, and those trying to join it. And I just wanted to know through you, Madam Chair, if one of our witnesses would have a current calculation. I've heard different numbers through time, but right now, what would this equate to a middle class American?
Thank you very much for the question.
Mr. Alexander, before you say, could you try to adjust your mic a bit?
Certainly. Is that better?
Just push
Madam
it
Clerk?
away from your mouth a bit.
A little bit away from your mouth. Okay, try it now.
Is that better? 1, 2, 3, 4.
We need you to talk a little bit more.
Yes, talk some more, Mr. Alexander. You can start
1,
your conversation.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
It's fine. Thank you very much, sir.
It's fine. Okay, thank you.
Sorry. Thank you very much for the question, member. Madam Chair, the latest statistics and data I have are from the National Association of Home Builders, which did a study and brought it to the attention of the U.S. administration. And their statistics indicate that the average cost of a middle-class house in the United States, the price has increased by between $35,000 and $40,000 because of the tariffs. And also for multi-unit housing, which is probably used more by lower income persons, the increase in prices is around $19,000. So we are arguing very vehemently, just as the National Association of Home Builders is that the tariffs on Canadian softwood lumber are having a significant impact on the price of housing in the United States, especially in the light of the recovery and for affordable housing.
Well, that's just, I think it highlights and underlines just how foolish these punitive, tariffs are and have been since the 80s. I know that, but in particular now, it's very, very difficult. And Madam Chair, one of the things that this committee was really, really good at was kind of getting in the face of American politicians. And I think it behooves us, and I'm not going to delve into it now, but that we discuss it about perhaps doing a virtual meeting with some of our American counterparts through the embassy, just so we can pound that message, because the members that were on this committee know full well how difficult it is to get Americans' attention with so many competing attentions. And when you bring this to them, a lot of times they don't know it, and a lot of times they greet it with shock, and they're like, "What? Yes, your constituents are paying $35,000 to $40,000 more for a middle class, home. So and affordability for the lower class, $19,000 is like $1 million. It's just silly. So thank you. I just want to make that point, Madam Chair. One of the things too as well, and I wanted to thank you for that work. What kind of other programs are available to the forestry sector to help them deal with this new tariff? We had the CIIT program before. I know that the Domtar in Northern Ontario and Espanola got about a $28 million investment in 2019 for a $57 million investment. What kind of programs are there in the budget or out there that these companies that are affected by them can use to continue to support themselves and the industry? Through you, Madam Chair, to one of the witnesses.
Thank you very much, honourable member. Maybe I'll ask my colleague, Mr. Barker, to respond to that question.
Yes, thank you. I think, as has been noted by the minister, we did institute a softwood lumber action plan shortly after the initial duties were implemented of over $800 million, and that was supplemented in 2019 by a further $250 million. Primarily, those funds go to the projects that look at innovative products and export strategies to other markets overseas beyond the United States. So that's the type of funding that has been provided. Of course, during the pandemic, forestry companies were able to also access all of the COVID response programs that were available to all companies in Canada. So those certainly also helped the forestry sector get back on its feet quite quickly after the initial pandemic shutdowns back a year ago. Within a very short period of time, mills were able to get back open and running once they made their facilities secure for their workers. And they are now almost completely fully back up to their pre-pandemic production levels.
Thank you, Mr. Barker. On to Mr. Sared Tremblay for 2.5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'd like to verify, because according to your internal, there's a professor at the University of Laval that said that there was, with the increase in construction and housing, was even stronger in the U.S. than in Canada. But he said that if that continues, it could have effects for Canadian producers and consumers, because it'll be more worthwhile for Canadian companies to sell to the States, because whether as opposed to selling in Canada. And even if it's a smaller market, there's more wood available in Canada. That's his interpretation. I don't know if it's the right one, but do you think that the forest industry and does the Biden administration really want to or intend to impose such tariffs?
Well, thank you very much, Honourable Member, for that question. Madam Chair, it is our hope and it is our expectation that continued litigation under the WTO, the NAFTA, and the CUSMA will bring the United States back to the negotiating table in good faith. This has been a strategy that Canada has used successfully in previous lumber disputes, and we believe it'll be successful in this time as well. With regard to the administration, all I can say is that some lumber disputes between Canada and the United States have occurred during both Republican and Democratic institutions or administrations, and so we are hopeful that that we can have some victories in the litigation, and also that our strong advocacy in the United States, especially with regard to the increase in prices for U.S. consumers, the tax that these duties put on U.S. home purchasers, will bring the U.S. back to the negotiating table.
Thirty seconds, Mr. Tremblay.
So if I've understood, you are saying that there is a real chance that these tariffs will in fact be imposed.
Sorry, I'm assuming you're referring to the administrative review 2 tariffs. We will do our best through advocacy and working with our strong allies in the United States, including the National Home Builders Association, to ensure that the tariffs are not imposed. If they are by chance imposed, we will take strong litigation measures to challenge those tariffs under under CUSMA.
Okay. Thank you very much. On to Mr. McGregor for 2.5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. To the officials, I'd asked the minister previously just about how much longer Canada can afford for this dispute to go on, and I just wanted to put that in the context of lumber prices. I believe the price today is hovering around $1,326 per 1,000 board feet. Compared to January when it was $649. So that gives you a sense of where we're at in the lumber price world. Does the department have a sense of, at what price point, assuming lumber goes down in the foreseeable future, at what price point do these duties start to have more harm on our industry? Because of course, the high lumber prices right now, our mills are doing very well. I mean, they've had to take on more shifts, hire more people. There's a huge demand for the product right now. But at what price point will we see these duties start to levy more harm on our industry? Do you have any information on that point?
Well, thank you very much for your question, Honourable Member. Madam Chair, it's difficult for us to say at what point that will start to affect Canadian industries. It would probably vary for each mill and each individual circumstance. What I can say that I think the increased prices are at this point, from what I understand from the National Association of Home Builders, is it's very demand driven. There's been some pent up demand during the pandemic as people do work on their houses, building new decks, and also there was some pent up demand because the housing construction market took a lull during the height of the pandemic, and so there's some rebound from there. It's difficult to say if the prices will go up or down or how long this demand will stay, but it is something that we are monitoring very, very closely.
Yes, I've heard reports too, anecdotally, people are using their vacation money to do renovations. And just quickly, one question is that I asked the minister just with respect to the anticipated cost of our litigation, both under the WTO and under CUSMA. Do you have any figures on that and how it compares with previous amounts that we've spent?
Well, thank you for that question, Honourable Member. Madam Chair, I don't have exact figures on that. I have, it's not something I have on hand. I can say that the litigation before the WTO was done by officials, by government counsel, and so there is no added cost to that. Some of the litigation before the CUSMA and the NAFTA panels is done by private sector law firms that work for the Government of Canada, and there is a litigation cost associated with that. But I'm sorry, I don't have the exact numbers. I might ask Mr. Barker if he knows that.
Time is up. Maybe if Mr. Barker gets to answer another question, he can throw that in if he has it with him. On to Mr. Lewis for 5 minutes, please.
Well, hello, Madam Chair. It's really a pleasure to be back here at International Trade, so thank you so very much. Just a few comments here. So first and foremost, I remember all the time that we spent on CUSMA and all the discussion around softwood lumber and how we were going to keep that out of CUSMA. And I do recall the Deputy Minister, Deputy Minister Freeland, coming to committee, and subsequent to that, four Conservatives actually wrote an open letter to her and gave her a couple of questions or suggestions. So I'm wondering, and this is quoted from the letter that I personally signed. It said, "Further, we recommend that you appoint a panel of experts to evaluate softwood lumber products not included on the export control list, including finished wood products under codes 4407 and 4409. And I'm wondering if any of the witnesses could perhaps enlighten me and tell me if that expert panel has happened and or if the government is part of that.
Thank you very much for that question, Honourable Member. Madam Chair, I think I may once again turn to Mr. Barker because I'm not aware of that.
Hello, I thank you for the question. I'm not aware of a specific expert panel that's been formed to look at those particular HS codes, but we do work on behalf of specialty product producers. And in fact, we did have a recent victory for cedar shake and shingle producers where we were able to get their products excluded from the duty orders completely recently, working closely with the industry on that. So that was one recent victory where we were able to exclude an entire category of products from the duty orders.
Thank you, Mr. Barker. Madam Chair, through you to either witness, please. A little bit disconcerting for me when I heard the minister say that they're looking at other opportunities, such as Australia, so offshore. To either witness, does that mean perhaps that there's really no hope for the Canada-US softwood lumber agreement? And if they could perhaps expand on that and let us know if they have personally got direction from the Minister's office or the Prime Minister's office to look for other opportunities for Canadian lumber.
Well, thank you very much for that question, Honourable Member. Madam Chair, the United States is the largest single market for Canadian softwood lumber exports, and I expect that it will remain so. And we will work very hard to reach an agreement to remove these unwarranted tariffs from Canadian softwood lumber exports. But I think we work hand in hand also to look for other markets for Canadian softwood lumber and forestry products to export to. So I'm talking about markets in Asia and markets in Europe. So maybe I'll just ask Rosalind Kwan, who's from the Trade Commission Service, to speak very quickly, briefly about what we're doing to find other markets to help Canadian exporters.
Thank you, Arun, and thank you, Madam Chair and Honourable Member. Of course, as part of the trade diversification strategy, the Trade Commissioner Service works very hard to help Canadian companies, including those in the forest industry, who are so vital to our economy, to be able to look at markets, whether it's in the US or around the world, to bring all the opportunities that they could tap into and link them up with these opportunities. And in that regard, of course, we have the established traditional products, but of course, as you may have heard, we also help the Canadian forest industry companies tap into the innovative side of bio-based and wood-based products for markets around the world, including in Europe, in Asia, and in the United States.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Madam Chair, again, through you to either of the witnesses. So it's been roughly 18 months since I sat on international trade, and basically we were told, don't worry about it. Leave it out of CUSMA, we're going to get a deal done. And I understand from my other colleagues, it's been since the early 80s. And I'm not here to throw blame. I'm here to get a job done. And I'm wondering, just the final question, please, through you, Madam Chair, to our witnesses. When was the last time that government officials actually sat at the table with our U.S. government officials, and I don't mean politicians, to kind of hash this out and give direction back, if I could please get that answer?
Thank you very much for that question, Honourable Member. Madam Chair, I think Canada has been very clear, right from the Prime Minister to the Minister to senior officials, that Canada is always open to having discussions to settle the softwood lumber issue. We've made this very, very clear to them. The Minister last raised softwood lumber, I think, when she had the Free Trade Commission meeting with Ambassador Tai about 2 weeks ago, and I understand the Prime Minister has made this very, very clear in meetings with President Biden. So the avenues of discussion are always open, and we welcome the United States to join us in a discussion to settle this dispute.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Great to have you back, Mr. Lewis. On to Ms. Bendayan for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and it's a pleasure to see Mr. Lewis back at the International Trade Committee. If I can, I just ask for a point of clarification from our officials. I did not catch, the minister identifying Australia in particular as a market for diversification of this particular sector. I did ask a question about what markets we might be looking at for our forest industry, and I wonder if officials could clarify: are there specific countries that we are looking at, or are we looking at all options?
I think the answer, Honourable Member, Madam Chair, is that we're looking at all options. We look at everywhere that we can to find markets for Canadian forestry products. That can be in Asia, that could be in Europe, but we are very open to finding avenues for helping Canadian exporters export their products to anywhere in the world, and we look for the key markets that can be most successful for Canadian exporters.
Thank you. And from a legal perspective, I understand that lawyers at trade and representing the government have been obviously very closely studying this issue for some time now, and do believe that Canada has nothing to be concerned about in terms of our respect for our obligations under CUSMA, and that even though our preference, of course, would be for a settlement directly, a negotiated settlement with the United States, that our government is prepared to use the tools that are available to us under CUSMA Chapter 19 in order to advance our position and resolve the matter. I wonder if you could take us through what a Chapter 19 dispute would look like.
Thank you very much for that question, Honourable Member. Madam Chair, maybe I'll ask Michael Owen, our lead litigator, to answer that question.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Honourable Member, for that question. A CUSMA Chapter 10 binational panel essentially takes the place of a court of first instance under U.S. law. That court is the U.S. Court of International Trade. So the CUSMA panel, which is formed of 3 members from one country and 2 members from another, essentially steps into the shoes of the U.S. court and determines whether or not the U.S. Department of Commerce's determinations are supported by substantial evidence or otherwise in accordance with U.S. law. If they are not, if the CUSMA panel finds that there is not sufficient evidence to support the U.S. findings or that they run afoul of U.S. statute or U.S. regulations, then the panel will remand the decision back to the U.S. Department of Commerce for correction. So it's a type of judicial review under U.S. law. And there may be a series of determinations and remands between the panel and the agency, the U.S. Department of Commerce, before we have a final outcome.
Thank you. And of course, I said Chapter 19, but that was under NAFTA, and now it is Chapter 10 under CUSMA. Madam Chair, do I have enough time for one more question?
Yes, you have 2 minutes remaining.
Thank you. I would perhaps continue with Mr. Owen to get a sense. Obviously, this is a question hated by lawyers, but how long approximately do you think that that type of dispute would take before arriving at a decision?
It's really difficult to say, and I mean, there's a separate record for each segment of a proceeding, an investigation, and then an administrative review. So they have their own sort of evidentiary basis that the panel has to review. Typically, we would expect maybe 2 to 4 remands. So sort of with each remand and redetermination, the period growing shorter. So an agency might receive a fair amount of time. The first time issues are sent back to it. Usually the second time the agency returns with a determination it's challenged anew by the Canadian parties, there's probably fewer issues. And it's also given a shorter amount of time by the panel to comply with the decision. So
during that time, are the measures in place? The measures continue to be in place.
The measures continue to be in place. The one big advantage of CUSMA review is that to the extent that the duty is ultimately reduced at the end of the process, the remands and the redeterminations, the money is refunded with interest to the Canadian industry.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, go ahead. You got 50 seconds if it's quick.
Yes, thank you. And so, as a result of that, a short but complete explanation of the process, I wonder if you could just let us know your best advice in the circumstances. Is it to conclude a negotiated settlement, or should we need to? Would you be pushing for litigation under CUSMA?
Yeah, I think we've consistently approached this with sort of, approaching this through litigation and attempting to secure wins through litigation to attempt to build pressure on the United States to return to the negotiating table, to be at the negotiating table. We're always open to negotiations and discussions, and I think the high price of lumber is sort of potentially may lead to that in the future. But there's no right one size fits all way to sort of resolve this longstanding dispute with the United States.
Thank you very much. On to Ms. Gray for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to all of the officials for being here today. We know the facts are that since October of 2015, when our last softwood lumber agreement expired, production in Canada decreased almost proportionate to increases of production in the United States. And this is a real concern when you look at these trend lines, because mills have closed and we're losing jobs to the United States. And we've heard today from officials and from the minister that they've been raising the issues with the U.S. They're open for discussion. But to go back to a question that my colleague Mr. Lewis was asking, to the officials, for any of you that can answer this. So by direction of the government, how many softwood lumber negotiating meetings have you had since 2015, since we haven't had a softwood lumber agreement?
Well, thank you for the question, Honourable Member. Madam Chair, we take every opportunity to raise the softwood lumber issue with the United States, from the Prime Minister to the Minister to senior officials. So any opportunity that we have to raise the issue and to indicate our willingness to enter into discussions on a fair and equitable negotiated deal, we take that opportunity. The last time I understand that the issue was raised was by Minister Ng herself with USTR-TI, and that occurred on the margins of the Free Trade Commission meeting, I believe, which was on May 17th.
So through you, Madam Chair, I mean, raising the issue is not the same as having a meeting where you sit down and you go through all of the details and you hash it out and you have a negotiation. So are you saying that there's been no meetings, no sessions like that since we've last had a softwood lumber agreement expire?
Well, thank you for the second question, Honourable Member. Madam Chair, we take every opportunity to indicate our willingness to engage in meaningful discussions on this issue. We've made it clear to the United States through the Prime Minister, through the Minister, and through senior officials that we are willing to engage in fruitful discussions that will result in an agreement that's fair to Canadian forestry workers, Canadian forestry communities, and the Canadian forestry industry. And we will maintain those open channels for discussion.
So if I can just clarify through you, Madam Chair, are you saying that you've asked for those meetings and those meetings they've been denied? You know, it's one thing to say that you want to have a discussion and you're open for conversation. It's another to say, look, we need to sit down, you know, this week, this month, you know, these dates and really get serious about this. And are you saying that you've requested that and the U.S. has denied that, or are you saying that you haven't requested in that way?
Thank you for the question, Honourable Member. Madam Chair, Canada has made it very clear to the United States and to the most senior levels of the United States that we're open to having a discussion with the United States about reaching a fair and equitable agreement. And so that's been at every opportunity that we have, from the Prime Minister to the Minister to senior officials.
Okay, thank you, through you, Madam Chair. So as of right now, looking forward, has the government directed you or any member of your department to schedule meetings to negotiate a softwood lumber agreement? And have you made that specific request to schedule meetings on this matter?
Thank you for the question, Honourable Member. Madam Chair, we are open, and we have indicated to the United States at every level possible, including senior officials, that we're open to a discussion to settle this matter through an equitable agreement that would be of benefit to both the United States and to Canada.
Well, it sounds like there's nothing planned. We haven't had anything planned in the past, and we don't have anything specifically planned in the future. So I'm sure that's going to be very concerning to Canadians and to the industry. On a different topic, can you table with the committee the analysis your department has conducted on the U.S. Commerce's Department softwood announcement from May 21st?
Maybe I will turn to Mike Owen, who's our legal counsel, to respond to that question.
Of course, we've reviewed the U.S. Department of Commerce's determination thoroughly, and we've been consulting with, my team, which is responsible for analyzing it under international law, and also with our U.S. counsel. So we have conducted that review. Of course, that review would be privileged.
So there's no information from that. Madam Chair, I still have I still have a little bit of time, if that's okay. Can you table for this committee the number of times and dates since November of 2015 that the Prime Minister and Cabinet Ministers have brought up softwood lumber with the U.S., and who brought it up to who, and the response that they received? Are you able to table that to this committee?
What I can tell you, Honourable Member, is that my understanding is that at every opportunity, the Prime Minister, the Minister, the Deputy Prime Minister, and senior officials have raised the issue of softwood lumber with U.S.
What is every opportunity? Is that like once a year, or is it?
Your time is up. Ms. Gray, your time is up, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
On to Mr. Sarai, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to know, has exports to the U.S. increased in the last 5 years of our softwood lumber?
Thank you for that question, Honourable Member. I am not certain. I don't have the statistics in front of me, but I might ask Mr. Barker if he knows the answer to that.
Hello there. So I guess in general, I mean, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me either, but in terms of our exports, I think they've held reasonably steady. Of course, the value of those exports has shot up quite a bit, given the price of lumber. So in the past 6 months, we've had the highest ever recorded value of Canadian exports of softwood lumber products to the United States. So as was mentioned before, mills are working flat out to make as much lumber as possible and ship it to customers both here in Canada and the U.S. So I would say that certainly the value of those exports is quite high, and I think the overall amount is also consistent A question previously had talked about production in Canada and production in the US. Of course, production also depends on availability of the raw material, the trees themselves. And as the honourable members who are from BC might know, with the pine beetle epidemic and forest fires, the availability of trees in British Columbia has declined over the past few years, at least the harvestable trees. And so while BC's production is impacted by that fundamental reason, we've seen production in the US South increase simply because they have many more trees available for harvesting. And so that's why you're seeing also some Canadian investment in that region as companies seek to ensure that they can keep up with their production numbers by investing where the resource is available at the current time.
Has there been any reduction in the exports to other markets like Southeast Asia, China, Japan, Korea, India, or due to the prices? Have we seen any decrease there, or has the exports been steady?
Thank you for that question, honourable member. I don't have the exact statistics in front of me, so I can't provide you with a statistical answer, but I imagine that the pent-up demand in other countries may be similar to what's happening in the United States and Canada, and so demand for Canadian softwood lumber in foreign markets probably is still holding steady, if not increasing.
And is the goal of diversification, I think a colleague of mine asked the minister prior, but is the goal of diversification, in my understanding, is so that you never get locked down to just one market. So you're not just susceptible to American tariffs or Asian tariffs or one country's. The goal to diversify, that if we ever get hit or have economic issues or trade issues or slowdowns in different economies, the economy is, the sector is diversified, that they can sell to other sectors. Is that the goal of diversifying the forestry sector in Canada?
Thank you for that question, honourable member. I think that's one of the objectives, is to ensure that Canadian suppliers always have markets for their products, whether that's in Asia, in Europe, or in the United States. Finding new markets and also selling new products like cross-laminated timber, lumber for high-rise buildings, expands the amount of value-added products that Canadians produce and creates good-paying jobs in Canada. So I think that finding more markets is good for the Canadian lumber and softwood lumber industry.
Has the department looked at ways that when this, and I'm pretty confident that we'll win the tribunal or any appellate bodies on this matter, and when we get the tariffs back, that there is a way to leverage that. It doesn't belong to us; it belongs to the sawmills that paid those tariffs. But to leverage those to invest more in the industry for more value-added goods by, say, $1 of the government being multiplied by $3 of theirs. Has anything like that, or any incentives been thought about so that we can leverage that over $5 billion that is sitting in tariffs and growing?
Thank you very much.
Get a bit of a brief answer, if that's possible.
Certainly. Thank you, member. I think, as you said, the money belongs to the mills and the companies that pay the duties, but the government is committed to helping the softwood lumber industry expand the range of products, especially value-added products that it produces, and finding new markets. So we would look at any opportunity to help our companies do so.
Thank you very much. On to Mr. Savard Tremblay for 2.5 minutes.
Oui, je voudrais peut-être.
I'd like to longer reply with regard to my question to the minister about new bills that are being discussed in 2 states, and the minister said that even though there's no real concern, what do we have to watch out for with regard to the definition of boreal forests that are in danger in these laws?
Thank you very much, honourable member, for the question. Madam Chair, the Government of Canada is watching the progress of these bills in California and New York very, very closely. We have consulates general and consulates in both California and New York who are monitoring the situation very carefully. They're also engaged in advocacy to key decision makers in those states to make them aware of the good forestry practices of Canada, to ensure that they know that Canada has some of the highest forestry and environmental practices in the world, and that there is no risk in Canada. We have very well managed forests, and there is no risk of diminishing forests in Canada.
Parfait, je vous remercie.
Thank you very much. So if I understand, then you're watching the situation, and that's a good thing. And are there nevertheless contacts with American counterparts, and do we have any more details on what might be considered and how they might define a diminishing forest?
Thank you very much for that question, Honourable Member. Madam Chair, I understand our consulates and our consulates general and our embassy in the United States are in contact with key decision makers in both New York and California to ensure that any definition of diminishing forest takes into account our responsible forest management practices and the environmental stewardship that Canada shows for its forests.
Thank you very much. The last remaining 2 minutes is to Mr. McGregor, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not a regular member of this committee, so I don't have as much expertise as the regular members of this committee. But I'm just wondering, when the duties are applied, say to raw logs heading down to the United States or to dimensional lumber, the duties are applied at the border and it enters the U.S. market. I guess Canadian consumers could suffer if that product is then manufactured into something more and then shipped back to Canada. Am I correct in reading that as well?
Thank you for that question, Honourable Member. Maybe I'll ask Colin Barker to respond to that.
Thank you for the question. So duties only apply to lumber. Logs are not a lumber product yet, so there's no duties. But Canada also has a log export process by which we monitor the export of logs. Certainly, the provincial government in BC also has a similar process for provincial crown land for logs. Usually all requests for log export permits are approved. We have over a 99% approval process, but they do go through a process to ensure a balance between domestic needs and export needs.
But just on the question, like on the lumber, if it's manufactured into a new product in the United States and then shipped back to Canada for sale, like is that a detrimental impact? Will Canadian consumers feel the impact of duties through that process?
I'm not aware myself of any significant reimportation of Canadian lumber back into Canada from Canadian logs that have been exported to the U.S. I'm not aware of that. I assume transportation costs, et cetera, back and forth might make that prohibitive. So that's my view there. And just quickly on your question about litigation costs, I'll just note briefly that I think the costs have been in line with previous years. So our council does a very good job of maintaining a cap on expenditures so that they are in line with previous years. And of course, any expenditures are in our view, at least well worthwhile given the high value of exports and the large amount of duties that are being held at the border. So the return on investment is certainly a good expenditure in my personal view.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much to all our witnesses for that valuable information on something that you can see is an important issue for all of us. So I will adjourn the meeting to all our members. Our next meeting, of course, will be on Monday. I hope you all have a wonderful, sunny, hot weekend in your area. All right, thank you all. Move adjournment.